25 years, I think it's amazing. I remember after 10 years going back down to Canberra with Liz in the car and seeing kids walking around the place with Brumbies jumpers on and Brumbies signs everywhere, and thinking, when we first arrived in Canberra, could we ever think that this is what it was going to be like?
Go back to '93 within ACT Rugby. That's when I broke into the senior team, played under 21s, and I think the Springboks came on a tour to Australia in '93. We played them at Manuka Oval. '94 comes around and we had a victory against the Waratahs up in Sydney. A young player like Joe Roff, the people like Kafer, Matt O'Connor, those types of names, Steve Larkham and others were coming through. So we were starting to make a bit of a name for ourselves.
Issue with that for people like George and myself was that it was a very strong push for us to leave Canberra in '94 and '95 and to go and play in competitions, club competitions in Sydney, in Brisbane, where the stronghold of Australian rugby was.
Yeah, well, the decision was made after that '95 World Cup, so it all happened very quickly. There was a thing called WRC. It was going to be almost like World Series cricket, and rugby went professional. And
then this thing called the ACT Brumbies started getting discussed as a real possibility.
First year of rugby completed up north at Lismore University, and then was told that I might be a chance to do okay down in Canberra. Brumbies weren't even a thought pattern, amateur rugby. So caution to the wind, mattress on the top of a Type 3 Volkswagen, drove from Lismore to Canberra.
We were the misfits and rejects. We had players who couldn't get a start in New South Wales and Queensland, and that made them and me and our team far more motivated than any team that we were playing against. So,
but also some of the interstate players, people like Owen Finnegan, our founding captain, Brett Robinson, David Giffen, a young player from Queensland, and others, Adam Magro, James Holbeck. These players came from interstate, weren't recognised or just bypassed for whatever reason from New South Wales and Queensland. They found a home with the Brumbies.
For a start, they weren't misfits. I suppose that's the other side. And they all had something to prove, because it was a big commitment for a lot of those players to come down from Queensland. Brett Robinson and...
I think the first interactions with the squad and Rod McQueen, he was probably the first person that recognised that rugby as a business model was not sustainable unless you had all sorts of different expertise funneling into one final product of 80-minute performances. You know, joining the timeline and the DNA of what the Brumbies were trying to achieve and engaging the community, importantly.
You know, it was particularly gratifying in those days because it was, the first and second year of professional rugby. So we were able to do some things that have never been done before.
We created incredible rivalries with New South Wales and Queensland, the powerhouses of Australian rugby, through that mentality that we had something to prove and we were ready to punch above our weight.
Through to '97 and the first final against one of the best New Zealand provincial teams ever to take the field. I remember losing. I was on the bench, Eden Park, didn't play a minute, but was blown away about how much work and hard work and honesty and failure we had to endure for each other and with each other to get to that point, to get to a final. Ewan McKenzie was sitting next to me and he said, "Mate, you're young enough." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're young enough to get to another one of these. Don't ever let it pass you by again. Make sure you get a hold of it for the Brumbies."
Another round of applause for him.
Were we a champion team or a team of champions? I think we're a bit of both. It was one of those things, I guess, from my perspective. I don't think there was one player in that team that didn't play to the absolute maximum that they could. And I was very proud of them as a team.